Great.
All right. So I'm going to start recording. All right. So we're still trying to get you guys interested in all of the cool stuff that's going on at the MovePA Pre-Con this year. In the interest of doing just that, I've invited yet another pre-con speaker to join me so we can chat a little bit more about what he's going to be talking about at the pre-con. As a reminder, I'm Kate McGee. I'm faculty over at Harrisburg University. I teach in the neuro realm, and I will allow my guest to introduce himself as well.
Great. Thank you. My name is Steve Montegani. I'm the Vice President of Prosthetics and Orthotics for NovaCare. I am a PT by background, so I just work with this group, but I try to do my best to blend the two practices together, whether it's prosthetics and PT or orthotics and PT.
All right, definitely some good overlap there. Folks who saw a previous video that came out talking about some of the in practice, in clinic applications of prosthetics and orthotics with 3D printing, this is going to be in the same vein. So you're in the right place if you are interested in that. So a lot of the PTs that we've chatted with about some of the topics we're covering in this kind of future ready approach to the pre-con has been this impression that kind of 3D printing it's a little bit out there in terms of it feels like science fiction. Not every clinic has a 3D printing or 3D printer available to them readily. So what would you say to the PTs who think that 3D printing sounds like science fiction rather than something they could do in clinics right now?
I think I had the same impression about 10 years ago when I entered this field. And then all of a sudden it became a reality because they come in all sizes. 3D printers, everybody pictures this big thing that you're going to produce something big with that you can't find a space for your office. They have tabletop ones, they have stand-up ones. They have companies will 3D print for you, right? So all you have to do is send them a scan from your phone and it's off and running. You don't even have to have it with you. So I think, it looked like it was way out there, but in reality, I think the 3D printing space has come in closer so that we can utilize it more.
So you gave me the perfect segue into this next question because you mentioned that this was kind of how you felt getting into this about 10 years ago. How have you seen things evolve in these past 10 years, even in the last 5 years?
If you asked me 5 years ago if we would get into it, I'd say, nah, the stuff coming out still not strong enough. It's going to break. And you saw these cute videos with kids with their plastic hands or things of that nature and rubber bands. And I said, yeah, I don't think we're there yet. And then all of a sudden, companies started using thermoplastics. They started using steel. They started using carbon fiber. You could turn around the product quicker. You could get a leg made for you in 2 weeks. And you're like, really, out of carbon fiber? And they're like, yeah. So I think as time's gone forward, it's kind of like anything you've asked for from the 3D space, they've kind of figured a way out of it. And they've even given, we have one of our offices that has one 3D printer in our space. So, and when I walk in the laboratory, it doesn't look out of space. It's not bigger than anything else I have.
So there's been some evolution in terms of the materials that are available, the speed with which you can get this in a patient's hands or on a patient's legs. That sounds like it's making it a lot more accessible for PT and patients alike there.
Yeah, I think in the O&P space we've started to find a space for it, but I think it's got applications all across. I mean, if you've ever been to the dentist, they're using it all the time now, right? So I think if you can think about it, you can make it.
So definitely some degree of kind of creativity involved in this particular space. What's one of the more surprising applications of 3D printing in the PT specific space or the rehab realm that you've seen?
You know what? I think casting is first and foremost. You think about if someone gets a fracture, they get a cast, they come in. Now you can make them 3D printed, carbon fiber. They can get wet. They're able to be clamshell, take on, take off. So it's not like you have these patients that are locked up forever. And then if you need to create something, whether it's a back brace, a thumb spica, any one of those things, you can have the next day. It's not like it takes a long time to 3D print those. You pick the material, and I think the great application is you can find ones that people don't feel hot in. The number one concern I think for most patients is, I'm dying. This thing keeps me hot. And realistically speaking, if you pick the right product, it's light, it does what it's supposed to do, and it's comfortable and breathable.
Yeah, we've actually got some hand and finger splints that'll be available for folks to see, try on, make use of when they're at the pre-conference. And I can definitely relate to the complaint about it's too hot or too compressive. I've got a nephew who, oh, hello, cat arriving. I've got a nephew who broke his thumb earlier this year, and because he was very young, he had put the whole arm cast because otherwise he'd wriggle his way out of it, as kids are wont to do. And of course, it got wet at the beach, and of course, it had to get off and replaced because it was the old traditional style cast. And I couldn't help but think that if some of the newer styles of cast that I've seen, including like they're almost like a lattice type as opposed to like a
Yes.
full solid cast, just the variety of applications that we could make use of just seems. Can you figure out a way to use it? Then great, we're going to use it in the clinic.
Yeah, and the lattice stuff is excellent. Like you said, I mean, you think about the old days when people would take a spoon to go scratch themselves up their cast the whole 9 yards. Like the lattice just gives you so much more room to do things with it.
Absolutely. So, who's mostly using 3D printing in the rehab world right now? Is there a steep learning curve for it? Is it mostly specialized folks?
No, I think obviously the buildings like acute rehabs probably have a better access to it. I think people just haven't figured out what the application would be. If I was working in a PT clinic today, I remember hand casting for foot orthotics, and I remember, how messy that was and how long that was. Now you can lease a piece of equipment and make 6 pairs of orthotics overnight. Literally scan them, put them in, have them done, have them back to your patient the next day. So I think that that's the ease of it. If you can use a phone, if you can scan, if you can take a picture, right, have a steady hand, that's how easy it is to use 3D printing because it all comes off of a scan from a foot, from a iPad or a phone, and then, like you said, off and running.
Yeah, and so you mentioned the phone earlier, and I wanted to get back to that. So it sounds like the on the kind of the origin side of things, stuff that we already have on hand, because who doesn't have a phone at this point, is what we use as kind of the basis for getting started. Know what body part you need casted, or what body part you need to work around, and getting a 3D scan or a solid image of that body part, and you're off to the races.
You are, and most 3D printers, if you're sending them externally to be fabricated, may have their own app, or there's some customizable common ones like 3D Size Me, and they just take any body part and then send the scan to them. Or if you have the computer and you have the printer there, send it right to your printer and let it go.
So it sounds like we've been dancing around a little bit the path that someone could go to from having no idea what this is to figuring out how to use it in their own clinics. Are there any other steps along that path that we should highlight before we wrap things up?
No, I think you have to be able to use your imagination and you have to be willing to try a couple things. For the first time, I saw that we did 3D printed cranial helmets, right? And we work with kids all the time. And to see the difference in the materials and the tensile strengths, you're like, wow, we could pretty much do anything. So if it was me and I was thinking about the 3D printing, I'd start to do some research on companies. There's plenty of companies out there that will print for you, so you don't have to have the equipment, and you can test it. You can send them an idea. If you're used to doing a lot of hand splinting, and you say, I'd love if I could try this in a carbon fiber, and it could have one strap, and they'll send the carbon fiber back. They'll cut the holes for you and off and run it. So I think we're only limited by our imagination now. And like I said, 10 years ago, I'd have been in the same place. But now, the more I see in our offices, the more that we work with other companies and surely at the trade shows, it's here. And now, of course, our guys are like, hey, you're going to buy me a 3D printer? I said, if it makes sense.
That ties in really well, actually, with the conversation I had with Jason last week about this exact same topic. He was highlighting just how many helmets they make nowadays, for kids with torticollis, for folks with a craniectomy, which, of course, as a neuro nerd, I'm super excited about because I've worked with a wide variety of helmets and seen them get used badly. But
Yeah.
the idea that all of this is limited by the applications that we can conceive of for our patients on a very individualized basis. I think that that's not just the future of PT, that's what we want the present of PT to be exactly like. So if this sounds like something you're interested in, or if you just want to learn a little bit more about it, we highly recommend you attend the APTA MovePA Pre-Con. There are only 40 seats, so it is a limited space available, but you'll get to see some of this equipment up close. You'll get to see some of what you can make with 3D printing. You'll also get to tie into some of the VR and AR and AI aspects of technology that we can make use of. There's really just a lot on the table for us as PTs right now. And the more we're using it in the present, the more we get to dictate how it gets used moving forward and ensure that it's used in a way that's best for us and best for our patients. So, Steve, thank you so much for joining me. Very happy to have you on.
Thanks, Kate. It was my pleasure.
All right. Looking forward to seeing you at the pre-con.
Same.